Thanks for joining me today. I am back here today with the second half of my interview with Jim McGraw. If you haven't heard the first episode, you can go back to Monday and listen to it. It was the first half of the interview, and Jim has had a really interesting career in the world of music. He has done all the music for series like Degrassi, The Next Generation, CBC's Republic of Doyle, Kids in the Hall, Death Comes to Town, Killjoys. He's done a bunch of feature film and documentary work. And he's done a lot of orchestration and conducted film scores and things like that. He's written arrangements for Tom Cochrane, Ian Thornley and Big Wreck, Tower of Power Horns, Manteca, the Northern Pikes, Chantal Kreviazuk, Sarah Slean, and Stephen Page. So he's got some really interesting things to say, and he has walked a path in music that isn't the same that, everybody goes down. So it's a really interesting perspective, and I can't wait for you to hear the rest of it. Let's go. So do you want to talk a little bit about, like, as an arranger,
Mhm.
um, what that looks like? And I understand that this can be different on different projects as well,
Yeah.
but some artists write in the studio, some don't. Some have preferences about the order in which things are tracked. Is there a
Yep.
difference for you between writing for recording projects and writing for live performance? And do you want to talk a little bit about the process of recording large instrumental works? Are you present for the recording? Is everything live or some things programmed? All that sort of
Um,
scope of things.
Most of the orchestral arranging I've been doing has been more for live.
Yeah.
Um, um, and usually what that's a case of is that, and so and what it is, you have their original recording that's on the record, right?
Yeah.
But that sometimes bears little resemblance to the version of the song they're doing live.
Mhm.
And for example, it might have a full band on the record, but live it's only piano,
Yep.
or it's vocal only, or it's a small rhythm section. Excuse me. So I generally will not have anything to do with that part of it. But what I try to do is, like, for example, in Stephen Page's instance, I'll find, like, I can't remember the last, there's some song, Good Boy it's called, and I guess it's a song by the Bare Naked Ladies from the late '90s, early 2000s. I'm not sure when, but it was a hit. It was a
Mhm.
big thing, and so I found a version on YouTube of just Stephen and his trio, Kevin Fox and Craig Northey and Stephen, playing it live in a bar.
Mhm.
And so I took that recording, um, plunked it into my computer, and then using my synths and all, samples and stuff, arranged to that,
Yep.
so that when the live orchestra played with the trio, it would work. It,
Mhm.
it would be relevant to what they were doing. And, the tempo's right, the sort of weight of it is right, and that again is like super fun and super easy to do. And also, as an arranger, 100% of the time, the person you're arranging for is going to want to hear a synth demo
Right.
of what it's going to be. Like, you can't say, "Don't worry, it's going to be great." You can't do
Hire
it.
the 100-piece
Nor,
orchestra.
yeah, and nor, by the way, would I have the confidence to just sort of scratch stuff out on a score and go, "It's going to be fabulous. Don't worry."
Right.
It's really nice for everybody, and the technology is
It's
really pretty darn good as far as getting a good facsimile of what
Yeah.
it's going to sound like without it being, "Oh, that's good enough. We don't need a live orchestra." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it still is going to be way better. So that's one aspect of it. And similarly, in the recording studio situation, again, if it's for an orchestral overdub or a horn section overdub, again, I won't have arranged the bed track.
Mhm.
It will already have done it. The only time I've arranged everything from top to bottom is where, you know what, I just don't do that. That's not really
Mhm.
I'm not a record producer.
Yeah.
I'm not a songwriter. So I'm generally coming in as an overdub guy.
Yep. Um, And when it comes to the recording process, are you usually present so that if anything needs to be sort of
Oh, yeah.
tweaked on the fly, that's
Well, I usually conduct. I'm usually conducting it. And
okay.
and you see, what a conductor is, at least in my experience, a conductor is not the guy going like this to keep everybody in time. What the conductor is, he's the guy running the rehearsal. Like before you even do a take, like he's the person, woman, guy, saying, actually, why don't we take that down an octave? Actually, why don't you guys lay out? Actually, why don't we put more first violins on that line and have less second violins on that line? Why don't we, first time through, let's don't play, and then we'll play. Like, it's those types of things. Why don't we try putting mutes on that? Why don't we, can you be louder, quieter, more expressive, less expressive? Like, you work on all those things verbally with them. And then when you do a take, it's, you're executing what you rehearsed. Like the idea of my conducting have anything to do with their performance, it's kind of moot,
Well, I think too, certainly at the level that you are working, the musicians that are being hired are people who can do it after rehearsing it and understanding what you want. They can do it without somebody standing in front of them counting 1, 2, 3, 4. They understand that. It is different than when you are working with greener musicians who might still need that visual traffic direction.
Oh, and they don't like changes. Like I know this for a fact that, because I also played trumpet in a community orchestra. That's wonderful. I've never played in an orchestra before in my life. I love it. But and my wife is a very keen amateur cellist who does the same thing. But amateurs, they practice, and they don't want you to change it. It throws like, what? But like, and I understand that. Like you don't want to throw too many curveballs to less experienced people, particularly if they've been working really hard at playing it this way. Take it up an octave, or just or add this note or change. Like it doesn't go over. I get that.
It's funny, you talk about, a minute ago you were talking about arranging with vocalists and how that is often just a very oral auditory process. And when I've watched my brother in the studio do the orchestral stuff for his records, he's not conducting. He always hires the Vancouver Film Orchestra, and they have a conductor who comes in and does it. But Josh is in the studio with them, but he's always, because he's written the arrangements himself, and he starts singing the parts that now he wants to hear to the violins. Okay, can you play?
No, and they don't respond to that.
Well, he manages to get he's worked with them a lot, so that I think that they've sort of learned that process with them. But
it's not the norm.
It is not the norm.
You can say, play a semiquaver on the third beat of bar measure 14. Like they'll do that. The idea of going zoodly, singing a lick to an orchestral string player is. I don't know about that.
Maybe it's less of a lick and more of a like, here, I want you to add this note or whatever. But it does become oral with him, and it's funny.
Well, that's good. They must be a good bunch.
Well, it sort of makes me realize how, because I don't work with orchestral players like ever, so it makes me realize how out of the realm of normal that is. You know what I mean? That's all. You have written arrangements for some vocal artists like Tom Cochrane, Ian Thornley, Big Wreck, the Northern Pikes, Chantal Kreviazuk, Sarah Slean, Stephen Page. What would you like up-and-coming artists to know about working with an arranger that would make that process more successful?
Well, do you mean working with an arranger on their records?
Yes. Yeah. So if they were going to hire an arranger to do something, but they've never done that before, they've never worked with an arranger, how do they navigate that relationship without tanking it?
Here's how they do it. You get records that you really like.
Okay.
I remember doing string arrangements for Bob Baker from the Tragically Hip. And he had these, he had a couple of Rolling Stone records that he really liked that had strings on them. And he had a Wes Montgomery tune with strings on there. So references is what it's all about. And if you can, because then what it is you can say, like, what do you want on this? We want like a George Martin, Beatles, Eleanor Rigby sort of thing, or we want a Paul Buckmaster, Elton John kind of thing, and if they don't know what they want, you want to explore that. Like I think in all of this realm, whether it's film music or arranging, where it's a little bit beyond some people's descriptive powers. Listening to stuff, like having references is the key, and that doesn't mean that you're copying it. What it means is you're narrowing it down to, I know what he wants. I know what she means. She means she wants it little, or she wants it cello, or she wants, what she really wants is that. Like it's and if they don't know, I'm not sure. I mean, nothing is worse, and I don't think it happens that often anymore, where some producer is forcing an artist to put syrupy strings on something. I don't think that happens anymore. I mean, it certainly would have used to, but I think they have an idea in mind to begin with, why you're getting involved at all. I'd say that it with show and tell, like references. I think that's the best way to communicate anything, really.
Yeah.
And the fun thing is that particularly working with more experienced musicians and more sort of literate musicians who know the whole history of pop music, where they're going, you know what I want in this? I want like that Dusty Springfield thing where they did the thing. Like, and even though it's 2023, like that's not irrelevant. Yeah. Right. Like I want like French horn, like they had it, like that kind of thing where everything old is new again, where you're, and also the idea that great music's great music. Yeah. So if you're referencing some great thing, it doesn't matter when it was,
Well, and I, not having been in that position myself, but I'm guessing that it kind of gives you as the arranger, like, okay, I understand what color we're painting with here.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Instead of
I
going in
remember
blind.
actually, here's where it didn't go well. I remember there was this very popular roots-oriented blues sort of musician, and somehow me and this fellow were involved with producing some tracks for him that had like a drum. It might have been in the 90s maybe, and we were putting a drum machine with his stuff, and we put horns on it, and he thought the horns made it sound like a game show, and not in a good way. I've never forgotten that. It was like, ow. It's like I'd done this horn arrangement. He said it made it sound like a game show, and I thought, oh, that's not good. Yeah, that's not a good reference.
No.
And he wasn't wrong. There shouldn't have been horns. Yeah.
What do you think creates a career with longevity?
Okay, that's that is that's the question of the hour,
isn't it though?
Because even for me, I mean, I'm 64 years old. I have found myself, way less in demand than I was 10 years ago. And I'm not saying that in a lamenting way. And I'm not even sort of ashamed to say that, because there's a great line about the career arc. It's like, who's Jim McGraw? Get me Jim McGraw. Get me a young Jim McGraw. Who's Jim McGraw? I mean, it's funny, but there's some truth to it, right?
Yeah.
That said, I think a key to longevity is, number one, what we talked about at the very beginning: be a straight shooter, be honest, don't stab people in the back, be a good hang. Have a great sense of humor about things. Have that thing going on. Don't turn into a bitter dick. Yeah. Don't turn into an egotistical jerk. Like all those types of things. I mean, those will kill you. Be a good egg through thick and through thin. Be loyal. Be kind. All those things. Number one. So as a human being. Yeah. And then number two, and this is something that I have found very challenging. And it's something that I guess advertising sort of drilled into me. If you're in commercial music, by that I contemporary music, you got to be aware of what's going on, of trends, if you will, or current practices, and you can't just keep flogging the same thing you were doing in the late 80s now. You have to adapt, you have to grow, you have to keep up technologically. I mean, even you know, you know, it's something that particularly as film composers, but I think just musicians in general, gear, 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 gear. Like,
Yeah.
got it. Like, you can't unless you're so successful that you have people that do that.
Yeah.
You know, you're the guy that has to put the new software in and the new operating system, buy the new piece of gear, know what the latest reverb is or microphone or soft synth, or you gotta know. And I mean, and also perhaps know what you're not good at. Like, I am not good at anything to do with hip hop. I don't,
Mm.
I just never really figured it out.
Mhm.
I'm not the right guy for that.
Mhm.
And and if I'm asked, if I'm put in positions where I have to do that sort of thing, it never goes well. you know. But you want to actually have a fair bit of versatility, hugely.
Mhm.
So you often think, I mean, I'm trying to think of an example. Well, just anyone who just keeps going and going, like, look, like Paul Simon, he just no stopping that guy.
Mhm.
He's not still writing 60s pop songs, or 60s
Mm.
folk songs. I mean, Neil Young, same thing. Like for some reason, these guys just keep adapting,
Mhm.
growing, changing, bobbing and weaving, with what's going on. And I mean, I suppose that's what you have to do. And the other thing about longevity is, I guess, and it's something that I should do way more of that I don't do enough of, is having something to do with younger people and younger generations. Like,
Mhm.
don't only be part of your own cohort, and
Mhm.
then because what happens is, and it's a typical thing, is that all the people that hire you, they end up sort of moving up or retiring themselves, and then suddenly,
Yeah.
like, all my buddies that I used to work for aren't doing it anymore. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's tricky. It's something. I mean, I used to always be the youngest guy in the room. Now I'm the oldest guy there. It's just kind of the way it goes.
I think music is beautiful in that way, though, that,
Yeah.
um and I mean, it's not alone, but it matters. Age matters more in some industries,
Mm.
not age in and of itself, but like sticking to your own age group.
Yeah.
And I think in music, that is only out of convenience. I don't think that we need to stick to our own age group at all. I think we can intermingle at will. You know what I mean?
Well, there's that great. I loved seeing this video the other day. It was that YouTube group Scary Pockets, right? They do those covers. Are you aware of them at all?
No, but now
No?
I'm gonna
Okay.
go
Well,
and look
anyway,
at them.
Scary Pocket, and they're in their 30s, and there's this young woman, Ryan, Stacy Ryan, I think her name is, and
Mhm.
she's saying they're doing a cover of American Boy by Estelle and Kanye, and they're the young hipsters playing, and who's playing bass but Lee Sklar,
Mhm.
with 72 years older, with a big beard, and killing it. And I just think, oh, that feels good. That looks right. There's nothing weird. It's not like, oh, that poor old guy, they gave him a job.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's more like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And the mastery and experience and gravitas he's bringing to the party is wonderful. So I like that.
Yeah.
I find that very inspiring.
Yeah, that's pretty
You
cool.
check it out. I mean,
I will.
specifically, there's two. You being a vocalist,
Mhm.
there's two you should check out. That American Boy by Scary Pockets, and also their cover of Walk This Way with this woman who, what is her name? She was supposed to sing a duet with Michael Jackson, and This Is It, and she was in that.
Oh, yeah, 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 in 10 feet from the mic and all
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
and 20 Feet from Stardom.
Yeah, yeah.
20 feet from
You knew
10 feet
exactly what I
from
was
Stardom.
talking about.
The show, 10 feet. She's in it. I can't remember what her name is, but
I
like,
know exactly who you're
killer.
talking about, though.
Killer.
Yeah.
So check out those two videos, because I also find it very inspiring in that live rhythm section groove playing is alive and well.
Yeah.
It's nice to see, because again, in top 40 or whatever current popular music, it's not really a thing.
Mhm.
It's okay. Like, I don't know.
I think that's
I'm
where you
not going
get
to
a lot
comment
of,
on that.
like, my perception when you get those moments where it's like, "Ah,
Mm.
that's so juicy," that
Yeah.
those are guys who came from jazz.
Yeah.
That's
Well, or You know what? I don't
And
know
maybe
about.
I'm so wrong saying that, but
You
I
know
think
what?
a lot.
Yeah, I think they're just groove players. You know, they're
Maybe.
just they just came from. I think it's more R&B and soul
Yeah.
than jazz, to tell you the truth. I
Yeah.
think that's where funk it
Yeah.
comes from. It's that
Fair enough. Yeah.
if you want to say like black music,
Yeah.
of which jazz is one of them, but there's a whole other
Of which all contemporary music
it has
descends
come
from.
from. No, it is true. That's what I'm saying. Like having a real grounding in that music
Yeah.
is what gives it soul
Yeah.
and feel and groove and all that beautiful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Is there anything that you see often missed or understood by artists or writers?
So,
Just sort of like in general, in the
mhm,
music industry, things
yeah.
that would just make their careers better, their
Oh,
music better, their all of our lives better. Do you notice anything that you feel like people where they miss the mark or they misunderstand
hmm.
what they're shooting for that would improve the landscape?
You know what? I mean, here's something that sounds old fogey-ish, but get good at your instrument, man.
Yep.
Play in tune, get good sound. Like those are missed.
Yeah.
Those are like, matter of fact, I think the most important thing in music, whether you're a vocalist or instrumentalist, is sound, is your sound. And you listen to great players of any instrument, and the first thing is their tone.
Hmm.
It's not how many notes they're playing. It's not how high they're playing. It's not. It's their sound is beautiful and resonant and it, like I said, it doesn't matter what the instrument is,
Hmm.
and that is something that the greats have that you just sort of take it for granted. So that's number one, sound number one,
Hmm.
and then and again, it's something like again, a young person. It's like you're hearing me go, no, they're not happening. Why? They don't sound any good.
Hmm.
And then sound is also related to and a close relative of pitch,
Yeah.
right? Is that if you don't sing or play in tune, again, like get it together, man. You know, you're not gonna make it. You're just not gonna. I mean, sure, you know, some famous, you know, Sade sings a little sharp,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
uh, or as Neil Young said, that's my sound, that's my brand, you know. Um, but I mean that's a biggie, and it's not something. It's not cool to have a shitty sound and to sing out of tune or to
Hmm.
play out of tune. That's not cool. And then the next thing is time. I mean, get your time together.
Pocket, pocket,
It
pocket,
is,
pocket.
um, and these are things that you know, geezers are critical of young people's
Hmm.
playing. It's like, oh, they got all the energy and they got all the showmanship and they go, but they sound like shit and they don't have any, and they can't play in tune or play in time. I mean, those are bare essentials. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, not the sort of premium
Yeah.
that it could be. Anyway, in my opinion. And I don't mean to sound like a crusty old bastard. It's just that
Nope.
those, anyone anyone today who's really great, you know, today they've got all those things happening.
Yep.
They do. It's just that they also have a funny haircut and a neat outfit too. But they've got that other thing going on. Seriously,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, and I think that the issue of pitch in particular, I
Mhm.
think over the last 20 years has been devalued a little bit.
Well, we know why.
We do know why,
Yeah.
but all the auto tune in the world doesn't fix it when you're I mean, well, now they can auto tune live and all of that, but it actually changes the tone. Like you hear it in the mix. It's different. And I still think, and this is a cross I will die on, that if you are a singer, it is your job to sing in tune, not to have a computer fix that for you all the time.
Well,
I don't mind it like, it was a great take and there was just
yeah.
this one spot that maybe needs to be tweaked a little bit. Okay, I can live with it in select moments like that. But by and large, full spectrum, it is your
Mhm.
job to sing in tune.
I know, and again, we live in an era where there are countless very famous, you know, successful, you know, recording artists that don't have these things that we're talking about going on. But
Yeah.
that's a different kettle of fish. Also, you got to have like everything going in your favor. I mean, you might like, why don't you get that happening?
Mhm.
And you know what I think it is? Maybe there's some. It's funny. maybe there's some people that should not be pursuing a career in music, if they can't get those basic things happening. And I know that my sense of pitch, it's not something, I guess it's something I'm just acutely aware of things being out of tune. Like, I don't necessarily, when I play my trumpet, I'm always in tune, but it's something that I'm really focusing on and searching for. And I know also, interestingly, to make a live acoustic instrument mesh with a bunch of synthesizers, like if it's a track that's all machines, and you try to put a trumpet or a saxophone or a flute or a clarinet or something on top of that, sometimes you got to pitch correct. Sometimes you have to put some global pitch correction to it, because the overtone structure of it is such that it's not supporting. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
No, I get that. When everything else is digital and so it's all perfect to start with. The natural instrument, the overtone series doesn't quite line up unless you also make that perfect. It's a little bit like sort of pitch quantizing.
Yeah.
Kind
No,
of.
I mean, and that's okay. I'm saying, like, even I will succumb to that.
Yeah. It
and
has
that is
its
another,
time and place.
and that is another sort of thing that young people are dealing with, is that they're dealing with 100% sampled and synth tracks, and that they have to somehow sing in tune with that or not sound out of tune with that. It's tough.
It is tough.
Because you don't have that lovely, complex a bed of overtones being generated randomly by all these instruments and stuff, and it's just, there's more wiggle room or something. I don't know. My theory.
You have collaborated with a lot of other artists over the years in one way or another.
Yep.
And that kind of collaboration really comes from a place of community and mutual respect and support, rather than a place of competition. And I think the music industry is perceived as a very, very competitive industry. And in some ways, it really is.
Oh, God, yeah.
And almost without fail, everybody that I talk to, their actual experience inside the industry as an artist lands a lot more in that sort of collaboration camp than in the competition camp. What has your experience been that way, and how do you think we can continue to foster a more supportive community?
Here's the way it feels like.
Okay.
You are forever on the outside looking in until you're in. You got your nose up against the glass and you want in, where there's the studio scene, the jingle scene, the film composing scene, the singer-songwriter scene. You are always on the outside, nose up against the glass, trying to get in. And then once you're in, you're in. Like, it's a funny thing. It's like, I remember the feeling of, I'm the same guy that I was a year ago, a month ago, or whatever, when I was a bicycle courier and couldn't get arrested. And now I'm exactly the same guy, and I'm, working on this, national GM campaign or something. I'm the same guy, but it's a question of it's, and what it is the competition is brutally fierce to get in, right?
Yeah.
That's where the competition is. But once you're in, there's something, and it's like a not a cult, but it's a community, and it's just the nature of the beast that there's this sort of barrier to entry, if you will, or there's like, no, you can't come in, there's no room. And I remember, there's no question, breaking into the scene, there were guys that, just didn't like it, didn't want to see the new kid in, and it's a dues paying experience. But you're right, once you're in, then there is a beautiful collaborative thing. Well, it's like I was saying earlier about our mutual friend Craig Northey introducing me to his friend Jesse Valenzuela. It was like, I'm a friend of Craig's, Jesse's a friend of Craig's, therefore I'm a friend of Jesse's. Like, it's a sort of, you're part of this community, and you are sort of deserve to be there, therefore, that kind of thing. So the dues paying is being accepted by both the sort of, not gatekeepers, but the people who are already there, that's a tricky thing to do. And the flip side of it is that there are certain people that are always looking for young people to come in and are much more conscientious about that, and those are the people you want to look for.
Yeah. Yeah.
To collaborate with,
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Is there Anything, anything else that you think is really important for up and coming artists to know that
Well,
we haven't
do
covered?
like I said, do everything. Okay, so I, you know, I did horn arrangements, I did string arrangements, I did lifting. You know, I would transcribe things for people.
Mhm,
I had a brief career writing high school big band charts for like the educational market that was
mhm,
published. I've done, corporate gigs and corporate video. I never really did much of the quote jobbing scene where you play
mhm,
weddings and bar mitzvahs. I never did that, but because I sort of I injured myself playing trumpet and sort of stopped playing trumpet and only did the writing for a very long time. But I did every type of gig you could possibly do, and also was really keen. I was not cool. I was keen. I just was thrilled and excited to do anything and everything, and
mhm,
it was like a puppy dog.
mhm.
And I think that throughout my career, one thing I've noticed is that people respond really well to enthusiasm. You
Yeah,
know, if it's genuine, like if you're really excited about something, and if you find, oh, I really love this about this. I think that's a very good quality to have, and that's about it. That is what I would say. But do anything and everything, and that you can, like, and don't see it as being irrelevant. Because again, you never know where something's going to lead.
yeah, yeah,
Just try and um, it's like anything. Find your tribe.
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
what it is. Find the like-minded. I was never, for example, I was never part of the punk scene,
Mhm.
right? And there's a whole gang that came up with a punk sensibility, and that's that they list the records they listened to. So that wasn't my thing. I mean, but I know people like that. It's
Mhm.
just that isn't something I didn't have in common with.
Yeah.
But that's a real tribe.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that sort of alludes to, you mentioned it earlier, but there are moments where it's really appropriate to say no, right?
What,
Like,
what,
well, you talked about, hip hop has never been your thing.
yeah. Oh no,
So,
I wouldn't be good at that. Yeah.
right. So, like, if you get asked to do that, I think sometimes when you're young and hungry,
Yeah.
you say yes to everything.
Well, I still think you should.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
yeah, I would. I think you sort of have, like, uh, you know yeah, because what would it have been? Oh yeah, well, you know what? When I was in my 20s, what was coming in was the transition from the 70s to the 80s. Well, 80s was all synth and drum machine.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a trumpet player, so
Yeah.
I had to learn synths and drum machine. I had to, like
Yeah.
you there was nothing else going on. I had to learn how to program and use sequencers and all that stuff. You just had, you just, there was no, well, or just don't be a musician anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's your choice. I mean, big bands aren't coming back.
No.
I mean, I'm being silly, but you got to just keep moving forward. And I mean, um, uh, I was trained as an acoustic musician, and end up spending now, 50 years later or whatever, it's almost 100% machine synthesizer stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just the way it is. It's not like there's no point in rallying against, oh, that's terrible. It's just the way it is. It's
Yeah.
get over it.
Yeah.
Learn how to do it, and it's like, um, not beat them at their own game. That doesn't sound right, but you just have to participate.
Yeah.
And I don't hate it. Like, I think computers have made me an infinitely better composer because it allows you to instantly capture an idea and loop it and work on it, and as opposed to, it's funny. I found a score, a photocopy of a
Mhm.
pencil score from 1982 that I'd written. It was an arrangement for full orchestra on Angels We Have Heard on High,
Mhm.
which for some Canada Pop's Christmas record, whatever. Never done it before, never written for orchestra before in my life. And I arranged the whole thing like with pencil and paper and a piano, had no idea what it was going to sound like. And then, went to the studio and heard it back and like cried because it wasn't terrible, kind of thing. And like, that's a neat skill to have.
Yeah.
But I'm just way better now that I can plunk it in and hear it ahead of time
Yeah.
and fix it, make it better and stuff. Because to tell you the truth, it freaks me out that I used to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it freaks me out. And I suppose at the time that was what you would call a barrier to entry, in that
Mhm.
you had to be able to do that if you wanted to do
Mhm.
that work.
Yeah.
And now you don't have to be able to do that if you
Yeah.
want to do that work. And that's okay. I think it's still better to know how than not know how.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Jim. Where
Well,
can
thanks. Well, me
people
too. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah. Where can people find you? Web, social media, upcoming
My
projects?
my website is jimmcrath.ca,
Okay. Which is
and
spelled Jim.
McGrath.
There we
That's right.
go. Yeah.
It's yeah, it's I think it's JIMMCGRATH.ca. That's my website.
Okay.
It just has stuff, and actually, I forgot to mention, I mean, I know everyone uses Instagram and social. Like, I'm not a social media person,
Yeah.
not for any, not to be judgy. I just know myself that I wouldn't fare well
It's not your
with that.
jam.
No, I like emailing my friends
Yeah.
and sending them clips and YouTubes and all that. But it's a closed loop, as
Yep.
it were. But I have a website, and at least I feel as though I am in control of my online
Yeah.
exposure or content, or
Yeah.
whatever. And I curate it, and this is the version of me that I'm happy to have out in the world online, and that's that. And it's pure professional. It's geared towards, if someone wants to work with me, they can go there and see what I'm about, and
Mhm.
that's it. Like, I don't actually care about driving traffic to it.
Mhm.
Like, no one's going to hire me by stumbling across my website. That's not
Right.
the way it works. Occasionally, someone will contact me to buy a score to a piece of classical music that I've written, and I'll go, "How the heck did you find me?" And they'll say, "YouTube."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, somehow it's on YouTube. They were looking for a clarinet and string piece. They found it, and they heard it, and they want to buy it, like, for $50 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that's important. I don't know, again, if people have websites anymore. I don't know if it's a thing.
I don't know. I do. But I don't know if the world at large.
You hear that, well, no one has Facebook anymore. It's all Instagram, and, well, no, now, like, I don't know about all that. I just know the website is, and you don't want your website to be dorky. You don't want it to be
Right.
black background with yellow lettering. Don't have that.
Right.
It should look cool, because if you're in the arts, and you should have a artistically,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's important, I think.
Yeah.
And I've only had one for, well, I guess about 15 years, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is late to the party, I think, a bit.
But you're there now.
Yeah. No, I don't. I figure if someone wants to get a hold of me, they can.
And that's really what it functions as, is a little bit of an online sampling of your work in a way
Yeah.
that you like to be
Yeah.
able to curate it,
Yeah.
and a way for people to reach you about
Yeah.
said
Yes.
work.
And for film, the other thing about film composing specifically, it is kind of all about your reel or whatever.
Yeah.
In that, I spent, well, as I've alluded to, since my late teens, early 20s, putting reels together. And unlike a singer-songwriter where you're putting 3 songs on a cassette or whatever, what you used to do,
Mhm. Yeah.
3 MP3s or whatever in an email, this is, 10-minute long pretend movie music cues that
Yeah.
you're always working on and trying to get the right combination and all that kind of thing. And that's the coin of the realm for a film composer.
Yeah.
And then what the next stage is that you prepare a reel for a specific job. If it's like a Western or
Mhm.
something, you put music that is relevant to that on your reel. And if you don't have any, you write some.
Mhm.
So that's what that's all about. And then, at least from a film composing point of view,
Yeah.
I don't have any of my arranging work on there. I just have I have my classical music and my film music.
Yeah.
I don't have any video either for some reason. I've just never done that. I've always just done music.
Well, there's always time.
Well, no, you know what? I mean, then they're just sort of watching the movie. They're not really listening to music. I don't know. I've
Yeah.
never done that.
Yeah.
For advertising, they used to do that, but that's because you've got these pictures that cost $1 million to make, and then you just put your music on it. It makes your music look really cool.
Yeah.
But that's a different. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Jim. This has been lots of fun chatting with you, and lots of really great information for
Oh, good.
a pathway in music that I think everybody knows exists, but not
Mm.
very many people know much about.
Well, and if I may also offer another thing, like I taught at
Please.
Humber College, I taught a film scoring program at Humber College for a number of years, and what I used to always say to the students is that don't feel bad if you haven't made it when you're 25 or whatever. Like, don't feel as though it's all like I didn't really start to happen until I was in my late 20s, early 30s. Like it
Hmm.
took that long, and I didn't score my first feature film until I was 40.
Hmm.
I mean, it just didn't happen for me earlier than that, and so people shouldn't despair. Number one, they shouldn't despair. And number two, they shouldn't be impatient.
Hmm.
It's a real long it's a long game,
Yeah.
and your 20s is a tough decade for anybody, and no less so for a creative person.
Yeah, yeah, that's the truth. I think we sometimes get wrapped up in, well, especially because the lens in pop music is that you have to make it young
No,
or
no,
your
yeah,
time is over. And
yeah,
I think we forget a little bit about the fact that there are all these other avenues in
mhm,
music that
yeah,
are not nearly so time specific, that
no,
you have a
no,
much longer period of time to work with.
and there's more of them
More
too.
way
There
more
there
of
are
them.
more. Like, like I said early on, like, the chances of me becoming a successful songwriter, like it was just that's such a small piece of the total music business pie, as
Mhm.
far as what you can do um, in it.
Yeah, yeah,
It still is the best though. It's a great podcast you should check out.
yeah.
It's called I think it's called the Economics of Everyday Things. It's put out by the Freakonomics Radio Network,
Okay.
and it's all about My Sharona, and
That's
it's
the
all about the creating of My Sharona and the financial exploitation of that song, like what has happened to that song, and it does make you want to be a songwriter.
yeah, yeah,
you know, when you hear about it, you go, oh, it does make you want to write one internationally famous hit song and what that means and what that brings and what it's. So it's a really entertaining. It's half an hour long, or
yeah,
no, it's not even. It's like 18 minutes long. It's great, and I think even non-musicians should listen to it to get an idea of just what it's all about,
yeah,
what the quote business is all about
yeah.
of that business.
All right. Well, I will
Yeah,
find that.
yeah,
I'll link it all. I'll link
yeah.
all the things in the show notes
Please
here,
do.
and I will check it out as well.
Good, you'll like it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Jim. I really appreciate your time, and I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Me too. I really liked it too.